In the state of Colorado, there is an intense, festering interstate college sports rivalry between the University of Colorado and Colorado State University. It seems no matter the sport, these two schools do not like each other. As a result, the two fan bases share a similar rivalry. The Rocky Mountain Showdown is an event that is almost that of a holiday in the state of Colorado. Despite this intense rivalry, the people of Colorado always tend to support and have the back of their own when these athletes turn pro, no matter which team your loyalties lie with. In this year's NFL draft, there are multiple players who hail from the state of Colorado who will likely have the support of Rams and Buffs fans alike. Not surprisingly, despite the divide when it comes to college football, most Rams and Buffs fans are loyal members of Broncos country and would love to see at least one of these players land with the Denver Broncos. The most notable of these players is none other than CSU tight end Trey McBride. McBride is a player who is universally ranked amongst the top of this year's tight end class. Of course, the Denver Broncos are likely going to be looking to bolster their tight end room through the NFL draft following the loss of Noah Fant to the Seattle Seahawks as part of the Russell Wilson trade. As much as Broncos country would universally like to see Trey McBride succeed in the NFL, there seems to be a bit of a divide amongst the fan base when it comes to him. One side feels that the hometown kid would fill the Broncos' void at tight end, and that the team should use top-end draft capital to get him. The other side feels that although Trey McBride is a great player, we would likely be able to find better value at a different position with the 64th pick, and we would also be able to find nearly equal value at the tight end position to a guy like Trey McBride in the later rounds of the draft. Today, we will break down both sides of this argument, and I will let you know where I stand on the very polarizing matter of Trey McBride in Broncos country. But before we jump into Trey McBride, be sure to leave a like on this video, as well as hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss another video. We are trying to reach 500 subscribers before the NFL draft, and we only have a few more days to go. But I do believe we can get there, so please be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I would really appreciate it. And now, back to your regularly scheduled video. Trey McBride grew up in the small town of Fort Morgan, Colorado, which is located about 85 miles northeast of Denver. He attended Fort Morgan High School from 2013 to 2017, where he was a three-sport star, excelling in football, basketball, and baseball. It was pretty clear that football was the best path for McBride, where he earned multiple honors at the tight end position. In his junior season, he was named to the Class 3A All-Colorado team after recording 32 receptions for 751 yards and 11 touchdowns. Although McBride was hampered by injury in his senior season, he still excelled on both sides of the ball, as he recorded 30 receptions for 450 yards and 4 touchdowns, while also rushing for 226 yards on offense. He subsequently saw playing time on the defensive side of the ball, where he recorded 40 tackles and 1 sack. He earned all Colorado honors as a senior due to this production. McBride was a 3-star recruit coming out of high school, and he ultimately decided to remain close to home, committing to play tight end for the CSU Rams in Fort Collins. In McBride's freshman season at CSU, he started 5 games, recording 7 catches for 89 yards and 1 touchdown. McBride was able to find his way into the starting lineup full-time as a sophomore, and he broke out that season. He was named to the All-Mountain West Conference team after catching 45 balls for 560 yards and 4 touchdowns. Prior to McBride's junior season, due to uncertainty about the Mountain West Conference's season in the early stages of the pandemic, he briefly dipped his toes into the transfer portal before ultimately deciding to remain at CSU. The Rams only ended up playing 4 games in 2020, but McBride once again earned all conference honors after recording 22 catches for 330 yards and 4 touchdowns. In McBride's senior season, the Rams returned to a full 12-game schedule, and Trey took advantage. Despite the Rams running a smash-mouth offense that predicated itself on running the football down the opponent's throat, McBride was the feature piece of their passing game. He recorded a career-high 90 receptions for 1,121 yards, but only one touchdown, but he still averaged a very solid 12.5 yards per catch. Along with once again receiving all conference honors last season, McBride was recognized with the John Mackey Award as the top tight end in college. Additionally, Pro Football Focus graded McBride as the top tight end in the country last season. He posted a superb 95.0 receiving grade, which was the top mark in the country. Although his run blocking grade was slightly mediocre, as he was only graded as the 64th best run blocking tight end last season, I feel that when you turn on his tape, his run blocking is still a very high quality aspect to his game. Speaking of McBride's tape, there is certainly a ton to love. He is still a very young player, as he will be entering just his age 22 season as a rookie. He has the dimensions to play the part, that's for sure. He measured in at 6'4" at the combine. One thing that does pique some curiosity for me is his weight, however. McBride's playing weight at CSU was 260 pounds, but at the combine, he weighed in at just 246 pounds. Perhaps he lost the 14 pounds in an attempt to gain some acceleration in the initial part of his routes, as he certainly didn't have the quickest acceleration on the planet at CSU. Although his initial acceleration is a bit chuggy, he does have nice speed when changing direction later in his routes, and he always leaves everything out on the field on every single snap. He is a very hard worker by nature, and it shows up very clearly on his tape. Since CSU ran a ton of play action last season, McBride got quite a bit of work on crossing routes. He really thrives on deep over routes, which take a bit more time to develop, which allow for him to make up ground when he struggles to gain speed on his initial get-off. Pretty much everyone likes to run those deep crossing routes off play action in the NFL, so that is a role McBride could come into the league and make a big impact right away. McBride does an excellent job picking up yards after the catch, and he has the potential to break off an explosive play at any given time. His big frame bodes very well for him as a contested catch guy, and you would frequently see CSU split McBride out wide and run him on a 9 route, and they would just chuck one up to him and let him use his size and length to go up and high point the ball. He has suction cup-like hands and does a really nice job securing balls with more mustard on them. As I alluded to earlier, I also quite like some of the traits that Trey McBride possesses in the run game. He brings a toughness and a grittiness to his game, which partially comes from his upbringing in farm country. He gives a very, very strong effort as a run blocker, and his size and frame certainly give him an advantage as a blocker. His technique could use some overall polishing, as you will occasionally see him whiff on his blocks due to his inability to finish. A tight end coach in the NFL should be able to clean this up, but he will never be the best blocking tight end in the business. But that's okay, because that's not really what he is going to be asked to do nearly as much as he was at CSU. I really like what I have seen in my scouting of Trey McBride. His game should figure to translate very well to the NFL, and I could easily see him being a contributor for a very long time. The question is, does Trey McBride make sense for the Denver Broncos? Multiple scouts have McBride as their tight end 1 this season, and he likely figures to be drafted somewhere in the top 50. There is an outside chance that McBride could fall to the Broncos at pick 64, but I don't see that happening. This would likely mean that if the Broncos really want Trey McBride, they would have to trade up from the 64th pick in the draft to get him. If we are being realistic, it would likely cost the Broncos an additional day 2 pick to move up high enough to be in striking distance for Trey McBride, which would probably be somewhere in the late 40s to early 50s. If you were to ask a pool of random Broncos fans their opinions on if general manager George Paton should make a move up to get Trey McBride, you will likely get a variety of responses. McBride would certainly bring value as a wide tight end. He would make an immediate impact both in the passing game and in the run game. He would fit the Denver Broncos offense well, as head coach Nathaniel Hackett likes to use quite a bit of 12 personnel, which is 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers, and 1 running back. Current Broncos starting tight end Alberto Cuebonam is a great vertical threat tight end, but he does not offer much of anything as a blocker. To help with this issue, the Broncos signed former Baltimore Ravens tight end Eric Tomlinson in free agency, but he is essentially a 6th offensive lineman who brings almost 0 value in the pass game. Trey McBride would certainly fill deficiencies that both Alberto and Eric Tomlinson have, so there is definitely a solid argument that could be made for the Broncos to trade up and get Trey McBride. As much as a large group of fans want us to make this move, if it were up to me, I wouldn't do it. Before you come after me with your torches and pitchforks, Broncos country, please hear me out. When evaluating draft prospects, you simply have to throw out the trivial stuff such as him being from Colorado. You have to ask yourself, if Trey McBride weren't from Colorado, would you still be pounding the table for the Broncos to move up and get him? I like Trey McBride a lot, but do I really feel that we would be getting good value burning 2 day 2 picks to get him? No, I really don't. The Broncos could easily land multiple impact players with those 2 picks at greater positions of need. At the same time, I feel that there are tight ends to be had in the later rounds of this draft that would not be a big drop-off from Trey McBride at all. One guy who immediately comes to mind is Virginia tight end Jelani Woods, who, if you've been following this channel for a while, you know that I am very high on. I feel that Jelani Woods and Trey McBride both bring a very similar skill set, but the big distinction is that Woods figures to be drafted much later than McBride does. Striking distance for Jelani Woods likely figures to be somewhere around pick 96. We could pick up someone at a greater position of need, such as edge rusher, nickel, or offensive tackle, with the picks that you would have traded for Trey McBride, and then you can get Jelani Woods at pick 96 and get way better value than if you were to trade up for Trey McBride. Even if we were to miss out on Jelani Woods, there are still several tight end prospects out there that could still bring a strong impact in the later rounds of the draft that you wouldn't have to give up premium draft capital for. It's all a matter of draft economics for general manager George Paton. Paton says that the Broncos like to look at their draft picks as darts, and the more picks that you have, the greater of a chance that you have to hit. I'm not sure if trading up for a player who doesn't have the greatest positional value would be in his MO. Again, not saying that I don't like Trey McBride, but I just feel that we can get nearly equal production in the later rounds of the draft. But of course, that is just my opinion. Let me know your thoughts on Trey McBride in the comment section below, Broncos country. I would really love to hear from you. Be sure to leave a like on this video, as well as subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss another video. Also, give me a follow on Twitter at Gage Madrid NFL for more coverage of our Denver Broncos as well as the NFL in general. And for now, this has been another episode of Sparkin Over Broncos, the show where we spark conversation about our Denver Broncos. I am your host, Gage Madrid, saying peace out.